The first real fracture didn't come with an argument or a slammed door. It came with silence. Thick, intentional silence. The kind that filled the room like fog after a burn, not loud, not sharp, but suffocating in its own way. It had been building for months, creeping into our house like a leak behind the wall that you only notice when the paint starts to bubble. She had started speaking in unfinished sentences, leaving thoughts dangling in the air, daring me to question them. I would say something normal, something small like, "Are we doing anything this weekend?" and she'd blink at me like I'd asked her to recite her bank PIN. Sometimes she answered with a shrug. Sometimes she didn't answer at all. And then she'd walk away, not storming out, just leaving. As if conversations were optional now. As if I wasn't worth finishing a sentence for. I began to notice changes in patterns, not just habits. Patterns are more dangerous. Habits can break. Patterns are carved. She no longer asked me how my day was. But more than that, she no longer asked me anything that didn't somehow loop back to her. She only initiated interaction when she wanted something. Not love, not connection things. Favors. Tasks. And then there was her laugh. That laugh, the one I used to hear echo from the kitchen when she was on a call, light and full, genuine. It vanished. Now it was replaced by a stifled, forced little chuckle that seemed more like punctuation than emotion. Except once, one night, I heard the real one again. I was coming upstairs after a late-night work call. As I passed the bathroom door, I heard her voice, low, almost conspiratorial. I paused. Not on purpose, just instinct. Then came the laugh. The real one. The one I hadn't heard in months. That was the first time I felt it, that precise twist in my chest that tells a man he's no longer needed in his own home. I didn't say anything that night. I didn't confront. I observed. That's the thing about watching someone drift, you don't stop them mid-step. You follow. Quietly. You let them think you're behind, but you walk right next to the truth. Then 3 days ago, I got a call. It wasn't what you'd expect, no crying, no apology, no dramatic confession. It came from someone I hadn't spoken to in a year. Her friend. Not even a close one. One of those people who always gave me weird vibes. She told me she needed to see me. Urgently. I asked her what it was about and she said she's in trouble. You need to know what she's doing. And what she's planning. She gave me a location. Some fancy tapas place downtown that my wife always complained about because the parking stressed her out. That was the first red flag. The second? The silence after I said I'd think about it. She didn't push. Didn't beg. Just said, all right, and hung up. As if that call was never about warning me. It was about seeing what I'd do next. So I waited. I didn't go. I spent the night checking traffic cams in the area through a little backdoor tool a friend of mine had left on my laptop, not illegal, just not exactly public. What I saw? Her car. Parked 2 blocks away. Her friend's car across the street. And 3 other vehicles I didn't recognize, all parked tightly around the same block. Too tight. Like a net. I knew it. Knew it in my bones. If I had driven there, I would have been boxed in. Cornered. Not violently, but socially. Emotionally. Manipulatively. A surprise confrontation. Or worse, a trap for leverage. So I didn't go. Instead, I called her bluff. I messaged her friend the next morning, told her I'd be willing to talk, but on my terms. A quiet spot I knew well, a rented co-working loft near the edge of town. Industrial building, no neighbors at night, no cameras inside. Legal, clean, but isolated enough to force real conversation. I said we'd meet there in 2 days. I booked the room and waited. Then this morning, something strange happened. I got a text, not from the friend, not from her. From a number I didn't recognize. It said, "So you figured it out. Meet me anyway. You need to hear what she's not telling you." No name. No context. Just that. That's where I am now. Waiting in the parking lot of the building. No fear, not anger either. Just the strange anticipation, like I'm about to see the final frame of a film I've been watching for too long. And something tells me it's not just her I'm going to be confronting in that room. There's more. Way more. And the worst part? I think she's planning something bigger than just betrayal. Something I'm not supposed to find out about until it's too late. But I'm early. And I'm ready. The building was dead silent when I stepped inside. The kind of silence that doesn't welcome you, it warns you. Concrete floors, glass walls, stale recycled air that smells faintly of printer toner and cold ambition. I had the keys to the room already. The owner owed me a favor from a time I don't talk about. I made sure no one saw me come in. Room 204. Far end of the hallway. I walked slowly, deliberately. My heart wasn't racing, it was pacing. Like it was watching me from behind glass, waiting to see what I'd do. Every step I took echoed harder than it should have. When I reached the door, it was unlocked. Just cracked. Enough to make me pause. I pushed it open with one finger. And she was there. Not her friend. Her. She was sitting in a chair like she owned the building, one leg crossed over the other, phone in hand, scrolling. She didn't look up right away. She wanted me to speak first. I didn't. I shut the door behind me, leaned against it, and just watched her. She finally glanced up as if noticing me for the first time and said, "You're early. You never used to be early for anything. No hello. No apology. No pretense of guilt." I took 3 steps into the room. I thought I was meeting Sarah. She shrugged. She got nervous. Said, "You sounded different. You were different. Smarter." Which is inconvenient. I didn't sit down. I didn't speak. I let her fill the space. She stood. Walked slowly toward the window. "So, what do you think you figured out?" The arrogance in her voice wasn't accidental. It was surgical. Like she had rehearsed this entire thing. Every word was a test. Every pause was bait. "You're seeing someone," I said. "Not a question. Just fact." She smiled faintly at the glass. "That's not new. That? Right there. Not denial. Not shock. Just confirmation. Casual confirmation. Like I had asked her if she ordered lunch without me. "You've been using him," I said, watching her posture shift just slightly. "Not for the usual reasons. Not just for attention. You're after something else. Something specific." She finally turned around. Her expression changed, but only subtly, like someone realizing the punchline might hit harder than they thought. "I underestimated you," she said. "You were always predictable. Reliable. That was your role. Stability. Utility. But now you're digging. And you're right, it's not just him." I took a step forward. "How many?" Her laugh was sharp, humorless. "Does it matter?" I felt something shift inside me. Not rage. Not betrayal. Something quieter but more dangerous. Realization. "You're not just cheating," I said slowly. "You're planning something. A move. And you needed me distracted. You needed me emotionally defanged. But when I didn't show up at that restaurant, your timeline cracked." Her face went still. And in that silence, something clicked. She wasn't alone in this. This wasn't just about romance or betrayal or some midlife impulse. This was about leverage. Position. Manipulation. She was orchestrating something bigger. Financial, maybe. Legal. Something tied to our shared assets. Something that required me to trust her right up until the moment she cut the cord. But I wasn't playing that part anymore. "Tell me what you're doing," I said. She walked toward me slowly. Stopped 2 feet away. Looked up with a glint in her eye, not anger, not fear. Just ice. "I'm removing obstacles," she said. "And you? You're my last one." I didn't flinch. "And what's the plan? Lie? Destroy? Steal?" "All of the above," she said softly. Then the door behind me opened. Not kicked. Not slammed. Just opened. I turned and there he was. The man. Not who I expected. Not one of the usual suspects. Not the coworker with the suspicious texts. Not the gym trainer with too many emojis. Someone older. Sharper. The kind of man who doesn't waste time talking unless he's already won. He stepped inside, closed the door behind him, and said, "We need to finish this. Now." And suddenly, I wasn't just betrayed. I was cornered. But what they didn't know was I had one more move left. One I hadn't told anyone. One that could flip this entire game on its head. The man didn't smile when he entered. He didn't acknowledge me as a person, just as an equation he had already solved. That was his mistake. He looked like the kind of guy who wore suits even when no one asked him to. The quiet, corporate type with fingers in contracts and mouths in bank vaults. This wasn't her lover. Not in the traditional sense. This was a partner in strategy, not in affection. She took a step to the side when he came in, not behind him, but next to him. Equal positioning. That told me everything I needed to know. They'd rehearsed this. "This is the part," he said in a calm, low voice, "where you agree to sign a few documents, move on peacefully, and everyone walks away with dignity intact." My laugh was quiet but genuine. Dignity? That's rich coming from a man hiding behind a woman who can't even keep eye contact during a lie. Her jaw tightened and she did that thing she always did when someone pointed out something she couldn't spin, a slow blink, then a slight lean forward as if proximity made her more believable. "This doesn't have to get ugly," she said. "But it will if you try to drag this out." "Define ugly," I said, stepping away from the wall. "Because from where I'm standing, I'm already knee-deep in it." The man moved to the table and pulled a folder from a leather briefcase. The sound of the clasp opening was too loud in the stillness. He laid the folder flat, then tapped it once, like a teacher signaling the start of an exam. "These," he said, "are preliminary agreements. Asset division. Real estate holdings. Some intellectual property clauses. She's offering you a very generous package considering." "Considering what?" I cut in. "That she's been planning this behind my back while using my name to secure a line of credit? That she's been siphoning money from our joint accounts through shell vendors?" That silenced them for a beat. Her eyes flinched. Not enough for a novice to notice. But I had lived next to that face long enough to read it like a headline. "You weren't supposed to find that," she muttered. "No," I said. "I wasn't. She turned to him quickly, her whisper sharp but low enough I couldn't make it out. But I could guess the content. She was telling him this wasn't going according to plan, that I'd gotten too far ahead. The man kept his expression flat. Listen, he said to me, slower now, like he was recalibrating, this can still be handled without a court? I snapped. Without discovery? Without emails and shell invoices and the full history of your involvement being aired out in a public forum. He didn't blink. But he did change. Slightly. Like a poker player realizing he'd misread the hand. You've been digging, he said. I planted the shovel the night she laughed behind the bathroom door. Her voice finally broke the tension. We can all lose here. Is that what you want? No, I said, I want something you never offered. The truth. The silence was thick again. But this time it had weight. I walked toward the folder, opened it slowly, scanned the top page. They had me listed as voluntarily relinquishing claim to our second property. The vacation house. The one I had paid off 2 years ago. My name was on the deed. Alone. But here, in their little script, I was giving it away. Along with a lot more. My name forged. Not expertly, but close. The kind of forgery that banks wouldn't catch unless someone looked. And they never expected me to look. I set the folder down. Here's what's going to happen, I said, keeping my voice steady. You're going to walk out of this room. You're going to tell your friend there's been a change of plans. And if I see even a whisper of these documents being used, I go straight to my attorney. Who already has copies. And timestamps. And digital trails. She didn't move. He didn't either. So I leaned in just enough to make them listen. You thought I'd be broken. Confused. Lost. But I stopped being that man the moment you asked me to pick up your dry cleaning at 10 p.m. while you slipped into someone else's apartment and thought I wouldn't notice. That landed. Her mouth opened, then closed. There it was, the first crack in her voice. You saw that. I let you see me see it, I said. I waved at the doorman. He nodded back. You walked right past him 10 minutes later. He's the reason I knew which floor. Silence. The man quietly closed the briefcase. He didn't say another word. He just looked at her, then at me, then nodded once and walked out. She didn't follow. Not yet. She stayed. Which told me this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. She stayed standing even after the door closed. That told me everything I needed to know. If he were the real muscle behind her plan, she would have followed him out. But she didn't. She stayed to perform. That was her power, illusion. The performance was the point. She believed the game was still hers to steer. I didn't speak. I let the silence work. Eventually, she sat back down, not delicately but with intent. Legs crossed, elbows on her knees, fingers laced like a chess player who thought she still had moves left. You don't understand what you're undoing, she said, voice low, controlled. There's a bigger picture you were never meant to see. And whose fault is that? I asked. You think you're the victim, she said, leaning forward. But you haven't been present in this marriage for over a year. You were here physically, sure. Paying bills, fixing lights. But emotionally? You were gone. I had to figure things out for myself. That word, emotionally. It was the favorite shield of people who trade in half-truths. She wanted a clean exit with her narrative intact. No stains, no accusations. Just a quiet burial of the mess she created. You're not here to justify an affair, I said. You're here to control the story. Because if I speak first, it breaks the script. I'm here, she said slowly, because you don't understand how much you're risking by pushing this. I walked over to the window, opened it halfway, letting the cold air in. The city lights outside blinked like eyes. I could see her reflection in the glass, tense but still smug. Like a magician who thinks the trick isn't over, just paused. Let's stop pretending, I said. You started something you can't finish. That man you brought in? He's not just your legal advisor. He's your partner in fraud. You needed my name to leverage a property deal, you forged the authorization, and now that the investment flipped, you're trying to walk away with it clean. You thought I wouldn't notice until it was too late. Her voice turned razor thin. You can't prove that I forged anything. I don't need to, I said. Because you were sloppy. You left a paper trail through a marketing agency you thought was invisible. Turns out they're not good at hiding invoices. And better yet, one of the emails confirming your authorization? Forwarded to my inbox by accident. I didn't even have to dig. She froze. Real, visible stillness. Then she stood fast. You think you're smarter than me, she hissed. But you're not. You're just a man with hurt feelings and an ego that won't let you see the full picture. And what picture is that? I asked, still calm. The one where you win by playing two people against each other, hoping they're too stunned to realize they're both being used? I had to protect myself, she snapped. You made everything a dead end. You shut down conversations. You planned everything like a strategy meeting. I couldn't breathe in this marriage. No, I said. You couldn't control it. That hit her harder than I thought. She stepped back, her hand clutching the edge of the table like gravity suddenly got heavier. You were never content, I said, stepping closer. You just needed a new role to play. The martyr. The trapped wife. But you were never trapped. You were bored. And you made everyone else pay for your boredom. Her voice dropped again, shaking slightly. I was going to tell you. I just needed the timing to be right. You were going to tell me, I repeated after I signed away everything. She didn't deny it. Didn't confirm it either. Just stared at me, not with regret, but with calculation. And then she said something I didn't expect. You think I'm scared of you, but I'm not, she said. I'm scared of what I'll do if I lose. That moment, that one line, was the only honest thing she had said since the moment I walked into that room. Because it wasn't about love. It never was. It was about control. About winning. And now? She was losing. Badly. She stood completely still after she said it. I'm scared of what I'll do if I lose. It wasn't a threat. That would have been easier. Threats are loud. Predictable. But this was different. A quiet, heavy truth slipped out too fast for her to control. And now it hung in the air between us like a burning wire. I watched her eyes scan my face, trying to gauge how much damage the line had done or how much leverage it might still buy her. But it was over. That one sentence unraveled everything. Because finally, I understood she didn't care about money. Or houses. Or even him. This was about image. Ownership. Power disguised as independence. She couldn't stand the idea of being seen as the one who lost. Not in public. Not to me. She moved to the table again, slower this time, less performance now. She pulled something out of her purse, a flash drive. Red plastic. Ordinary but deliberate. She didn't hand it to me. Just placed it on the table between us like it was evidence in a trial we hadn't acknowledged yet. What's on it? I asked. She didn't answer directly. I kept records. On everything. On him. On the company. On the deals he made under fake subsidiaries. He promised me a payout. A clean exit. Said he'd cover everything if I handled the paperwork. You were going to blackmail him? I asked. No, she said quietly. I was going to protect myself. In case he turned. But you didn't plan on me turning, I said. That stopped her. You were always the constant, she said. The quiet one. The man who didn't question. Who trusted people too much. I figured you'd just accept the story and walk away with your pride and maybe half a car. I felt something shift again, not anger, not betrayal. Something colder. A kind of detachment that only comes when you see the person in front of you clearly for the first time. You really believed I wouldn't fight, I said. You never have, she whispered. And there it was. That's what all this was built on. Not hate. Not passion. Just expectation. She thought I wouldn't resist because I hadn't before. Because I'd always chosen peace. Even when she chipped at me. Ignored me. Shaped our marriage into a script where she got all the lines and I just moved the scenery. But that man, the one who stayed quiet to keep the peace, he died the night she walked past that doorman. She moved closer to the flash drive, fingers hovering over it. If I give this to you, you'll have everything you need to burn him. And maybe me too. You'll win. Fully. And? I asked. Her eyes locked on mine. Then what? You burn us both? You go public? Take it all and walk out of this as the good guy. I stepped forward. Just one step. Enough to change the air in the room. I don't need to be the good guy, I said. I just need the truth out there. You want to survive? Fine. But not by burying me to do it. She stared at the drive. I could see her hands trembling, just slightly. Not fear. Rage. At herself, at me, at everything unraveling. I never wanted this, she said. Then you shouldn't have started it, I replied. She pushed the drive toward me, not dramatically, not angrily. Just slid it an inch forward and stepped back. I didn't give it to you, she said flatly. You found it. Understood. I pocketed it. Felt the weight of it like it was more than plastic and circuits. It wasn't just evidence. It was the last piece. The final key. And I knew the moment I opened those files there would be no turning back. She looked at me one last time. No apology. No sadness. Just calculation. Like she was already working on the next angle, the walk back to my car felt longer than it should have. I wasn't rushing. I wanted the cold night air to scrape some clarity back into my mind. Every step echoed with new weight. The flash drive felt like it burned through the lining of my jacket, not with heat, but with the realization of how much deeper all this had gone than I ever imagined. It wasn't just an affair. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a campaign. She had been organizing a clean break that left me as the shell of a man, emotionally framed, financially emptied, legally blind. And worse than that, she counted on me thanking her on the way out. But now I had names. And files. And enough to start flipping people who didn't know they were part of this mess. By the time I reached my car, I already had a plan. I didn't go home. I went to a hotel. Cheap, clean, anonymous. I took out an old laptop I hadn't touched in a year, stripped of anything personal. I wiped it again anyway. Paranoia was no longer a luxury. The flash drive had 3 folders. One labeled C accounts, one L archive, and one named only exit. I started with C accounts. Inside were PDF scans of wire transfers, tens of thousands shuffled through fake design invoices. Some in her name. Most in aliases. I recognized one, a name she'd once joked about using if she ever wanted to disappear and start over. At the time, I laughed. Now it felt like she'd been rehearsing. Then came the real surprise. Embedded audio files. Secret recordings. Meetings with the man from the loft. Conversations about liquidating assets, setting up offshore accounts. She never sounded desperate in them. Just professional. Like this wasn't personal at all, just another project. But it was the L archive folder that cut deeper. That folder held a curated collection of chats. Screenshots of messages between her and the others, not just the man from tonight, but two others. Men I'd never met, but who spoke about me like I was some relic. They had a nickname for me. The ghost in the living room. Apparently, that's what she called me when they joked behind closed doors. There was one message dated 6 months back, he won't see it coming. He doesn't even know I've started prepping the exit. When I'm out, he won't even have a couch to sit on. I didn't realize I was gripping the edge of the desk until I heard the wood creak under my hand. Not out of anger. Not even pain. Just displacement. Like I was reading about a stranger. Someone who had been erased in real time. The final folder exit was the blueprint. A timeline. Color-coded dates of what she needed from me at each stage, a signature here, a forwarded email there. A psychological breakdown mapped out like a project milestone, trigger guilt in March. Begin silence phase mid-April. He'll question himself before he questions me. She had mapped my unraveling. And I had nearly followed it to the letter. But the game was off script now. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't blink. I cataloged everything. Uploaded redundant backups to cloud storage under new IDs. Then I made one call to someone I hadn't spoken to in over 5 years. Someone I'd once helped out of a very bad corner. The kind of favor that echoes if you cash it right. I need quiet digital forensics, I said when he picked up. And I need it yesterday. He didn't ask questions. I gave him the drive. Now I wait. Because it's no longer about surviving. It's about making sure every single person who thought I was a placeholder realizes they bet on the wrong ghost. The next morning, I woke up in a different world. It wasn't just the sterile hotel room with its beige walls and the hum of a broken air conditioner. It was the realization that I didn't have a home to return to, not the one I thought I had anyway. Everything familiar was now just set dressing on a stage built to make me believe I was safe. My phone buzzed at 7:14 a.m. sharp. It was him, the contact I'd called in the dead of night. He wasn't a hacker, not exactly. More like a ghost who happened to speak fluent data. The kind of person who could slip into systems without leaving a fingerprint. Got it, his message read. And you were right, it's bigger. Much bigger. Meet me. I didn't hesitate. 30 minutes later, I sat across from him in a diner that smelled like burnt toast and broken dreams. He slid a battered laptop across the table, tapping once on the screen. There's a third player, he said without preamble. Someone neither of them mentioned. I leaned in. There's a law firm involved, he continued. But not officially. They've been moving money through silent partners, buying up properties at artificially deflated prices. It looks like your wife and her little business partner were part of a bigger sweep, dozens of properties, hundreds of shell accounts. You were supposed to be collateral damage, wrapped up neatly. Collateral damage. That phrase hit differently when you realized you were never the main target, just a loose end in someone else's operation. He pulled up a photo. Grainy but clear enough, the older man from the loft meeting, but standing beside another man I'd never seen before. Expensive suit. Greased hair. The kind of smile you only see in campaign posters and mugshots. His name's Walter Green, my guy said. Officially? Investment consultant. Unofficially? He launders money through real estate. Dirty but just clean enough that most people don't look twice. Your wife wasn't orchestrating this, she was subcontracted. They used her emotional access to you to cover their trail. I stared at the screen for a long time, piecing it together. She hadn't just betrayed me out of boredom or cruelty. She sold me. Packaged my trust into a product someone else could cash in. The air in the diner felt heavier. Here's the kicker, he said. You're not the only husband they did this to. Not even close. He slid a file toward me. Multiple names. Addresses. Case notes. Men like me. Some older, some younger. All with assets. All blindsided by the people they trusted most. And every single one tied back, one way or another, to this little silent machine Green was running. You still want to handle this quietly? He asked. I shook my head. No. I want it loud. But smart. I leaned back, breathing in the stale air, feeling the contours of my next steps forming sharp in my mind. I didn't need to blow everything up at once. That would be messy, emotional. I needed precision. I needed them to panic. And to panic, they had to believe for a little while longer that I was still playing the fool. I thanked him, slid him a burner phone, and gave him one more job: monitor everything. Their movements. Their calls. Their messages. I wanted to know every flicker of fear, every panicked mistake. Because the next phase wasn't just about saving myself. It was about flipping the table they thought they owned and letting the wreckage crush them on the way down. I left the diner feeling lighter. Clearer. No anger now. No sadness. Only purpose. And the first call I made once I was alone? It wasn't to a lawyer. It was to someone even she wouldn't see coming. Someone whose loyalty she never thought I could win back. I made the call using a burner. 3 rings. Then a voice I hadn't heard in over a year answered, cautious and cold. "Hello? Ben," I said. "It's me. I need a meeting. Today." There was a long pause on the other end. Ben wasn't just an old friend, he used to be her friend too. Closer to her than to me once. They worked together years ago. Shared drinks, laughs, confidences. I always suspected there were secrets between them, things I wasn't invited to hear. But when the fractures started to show in our marriage, Ben disappeared. Quietly. I hadn't seen or heard from him since. Now, I needed him. "I don't know if that's a good idea," he said finally, voice taut. "It's not about you and me," I said. "It's about Lindsay." Another long silence. Then, where? I gave him the location: a public park near the river. Neutral ground. Open space. No cameras close enough to pick up real conversation. If Ben was involved, even tangentially, I needed to know. 2 hours later, I spotted him by the benches under the sycamores. Dressed casually, baseball cap low, hands jammed into the pockets of a battered leather jacket. He looked older. Tired. I approached without haste. Ben saw me and didn't smile. Didn't offer a handshake. That was fine. "We weren't here for pleasantries. You dragged me out here for what?" he said. Not angry. Guarded. I pulled out a small envelope. Slid it into his hand like we were passing secrets at a Cold War checkpoint. He opened it. Inside were copies of the wire transfer scans, the timelines she had built, and a photo of the man from the loft, her business partner. Ben's face hardened as he flipped through the contents. His hand trembled slightly. He shoved the papers back into the envelope and looked at me with something raw behind his eyes. "I didn't know," he said, almost hoarse. "I swear to you, Mike. I had no idea." "Then why did you disappear?" I asked, voice low. He shook his head. "She warned me off. Told me it was dangerous to stay close to you. Said you were spiraling. Said if I stayed involved it'd ruin me too." I studied him. His face. His body language. The way his hands stayed visible, the way his shoulders dropped when he spoke. He was telling the truth, or he believed he was. "That was enough for now. She used you," I said. "Like she used me. Like she used everyone." Ben looked out over the water, face carved in frustration. "What do you want from me?" "I want information," I said. "I want everything you know about her. About who she's been meeting, who she's been dealing with. I want names, dates, locations. I don't care how small it seems. If you've seen it, heard it, or even suspected it, I want it." He hesitated. "Ben," I said, cutting through the pause. "If she goes down and you're anywhere near this, even by accident, you're going to wish you had talked to me when you had the chance." That landed. He exhaled, slow and shaky. "I'll help you," he said finally. "But you have to promise me something." "What?" "You finish it. You don't just walk away once you scare her. You burn the whole thing down." I nodded once. No hesitation. "I'm not walking away," I said. "Not this time." We parted without ceremony. No goodbyes. No reassurances. That night, Ben started sending me files. Names. Meetings. Conversations she had thought were invisible. And one name kept surfacing. Again and again. Walter Green. But there was another name, too, buried deep in a text thread. A woman's name. Not hers. Someone she was scared of. Someone she owed. I didn't recognize it. Yet. But I would. And when I did, the game would change again. Because Lindsay wasn't just running from me anymore. She was running from someone even worse. I didn't sleep that night either. I sat in the hotel room, the only light coming from the laptop screen, as message after message from Ben filtered in. Scraps of information, screenshots, recordings pulled from old group chats and hidden contacts lists. Most of it confirmed what I already knew, that Lindsay wasn't freelancing in her betrayal. She was operating under someone's thumb. But one thread hit different. The name that kept popping up wasn't just another middleman or silent partner. It was a woman. Naomi Vance. A name Lindsay had never once mentioned to me. Not even in passing. And Lindsay wasn't the type to keep female friends. She didn't believe in alliances she couldn't control. I dug. Hard. Naomi Vance wasn't a ghost. She was very real, but she worked hard to stay invisible. On paper, she owned a chain of small marketing firms. In practice, she brokered influence. Corporate blackmail. Under-the-table acquisitions. making inconvenient people disappear legally, financially, reputationally. And according to the files Ben found, Lindsay owed her. Owed her badly. There was an old message thread, nearly a year old, buried in Lindsay's cloud backups. You promised me a return, Lindsay. Deliver, or you'll be the next problem I solve. The text was cold. Surgical. And it wasn't a bluff. That's when it hit me. Lindsay didn't just betray me because she wanted out. She was being pushed out. Pushed to liquidate everything we built, push the assets through dummy channels and hand them off, or risk becoming a liability herself. The affair wasn't even her worst sin. It was a distraction. A pressure valve while she tried to race a clock she could never beat. I closed the laptop and stood by the window, the city bleeding orange and black under the night sky. My mind wasn't racing anymore. It was sharpening. Lindsay thought she was the main character of this collapse. But she was a pawn too. And Naomi Vance? She was the one tipping over the board. I needed to move before Naomi decided cleaning up meant silencing everyone involved, including me. So I made a decision. One that burned going down but was clean going forward. I scheduled a meeting through one of the shell companies Naomi used, one she wouldn't expect to be compromised yet. Not to threaten. Not to expose. To offer something she couldn't resist. Information. About Lindsay. About the man Lindsay was working with behind Naomi's back. Because that was the final betrayal Naomi would never forgive, being double-crossed by someone she thought she owned. I didn't do it to save Lindsay. I did it to survive. Because if Naomi was going to burn someone to the ground, I needed to make damn sure I wasn't standing anywhere near the fire when it started. And the meeting? It was already set. Tomorrow. Midnight. Neutral ground. No names. No cameras. Just the pure, cold transaction of survival. And when it was done, there would be nothing left of Lindsay's empire. Only ashes. And a memory she couldn't manipulate anymore. The meeting point was an abandoned train yard just outside the city limits. Midnight sharp. Empty boxcars rusting on dead tracks, the air thick with the smell of old iron and damp concrete. No lights. No cameras. No place to run. Perfect. I parked my car 3 streets over, walked in on foot, keeping the briefcase tight in my hand. Inside it wasn't cash. It wasn't weapons. It was the true currency Naomi Vance valued, leverage. She was already there when I arrived. Tall, sharp-featured, dressed in a dark trench coat that blended into the night like smoke. No guards, no backup. She didn't need them. She stood by one of the cars, arms crossed, watching me approach with a predator's patience. You're punctual, she said, voice low but cutting. I'm motivated, I replied. A tiny, cold smile crossed her lips. Not friendly. Not welcoming. Just the acknowledgement of another player who finally understood the rules. Let's not waste time, she said. You have something I want, and I have something you need, I corrected, stopping a safe distance away. I set the briefcase down between us. This, I said, is everything you don't know yet about Lindsay's side deals. Her unauthorized partnerships. Her attempts to hide money that was supposed to flow through your pipeline. Naomi tilted her head slightly, as if curious. But not surprised. She already knew Lindsay was slipping, she just hadn't decided how to handle it yet. Until now. And what do you want, she asked. Simple, I said. When you take her down, leave me out of it. No splash damage. No accidents. No reminders. Naomi stepped forward. Then opened the case, flicked through the files inside with gloved hands. She saw the emails. The bank logs. The text messages. The transaction screenshots. She lingered a little longer on a photo of Lindsay smiling over drinks with a man she had sworn she didn't even know. When she closed the case, she stood straighter. Done, she said. That was it. No arguments. No negotiations. Because in Naomi's world, betrayal didn't need to be punished loudly. It needed to be erased efficiently. She walked away without another word, carrying the case in one hand like it weighed nothing. And I stood there for a long moment after she disappeared into the darkness, breathing in the cold, heavy air, feeling something shift inside me. It wasn't victory. It wasn't revenge. It was freedom. The next day, I went home, not to her. Not to our old house. That was gone now. Sold quietly while she was busy drowning. The money was clean, sitting in a new account under a new name. When Lindsay finally tried to call me, panicked, desperate, realizing too late that her backup plans had crumbled, I let it ring. Watched the screen flash her name one last time. And then I turned off the phone. Not out of cruelty. Out of clarity. Because some betrayals aren't meant to be confronted. They're meant to be walked away from. Without a word. Without a second glance. Without regret. For the first time in years, I wasn't part of someone else's story. I was writing my own. And she? She was nothing but a ghost in the rearview mirror. Fading. Irrelevant. Forgotten.